How honoured we are to be able to host this meeting here to explore how Belgium and its partners can best participate and best support EDCTP3 activities and programme. And it's really good to see so many people come here in person and also join online. I was really quite encouraged by the enthusiasm there was for this meeting, and which speaks perhaps for its need. And the thing that excited me particularly about it, I think, is that the diversity of partners that we're bringing together here today. We have partners who are in innovation and development in the commercial sector, in the pharma sector. We have partners in capacity building. We have partners who are implementing programs in country, and also partners in country and out of country who are generating scientific data and doing the science. And really, all of these partners all have essentially the same end goal, which is to improve health from infectious diseases in populations largely in Africa. So we don't have much time. I just want to finish off just by saying thank you to Saskia in particular, who's been spearheading the kind of organisation of this, and to EDCTP3 for their support in coming today and providing us the information that we're all looking forward to. So with that, I'm going to pass on quickly, because we're already running a bit late, to Saskia for a little bit more housekeeping and a few more details. Thanks very much.
Hi, thank you, Marc-Alain, Director of the Institute. As Marc-Alain said, we were very enthused by the enthusiasm that we got from the participants when we announced this event. So I think this demonstrates how important this EDCTP program is for the Belgian ecosystem and its network and its interaction with the African continent. So this is encouraging then to get everybody together and discuss about the topics that interest you, that worry you, that enthuse you. And therefore, we have today here a program that is really assembled by you. We've invited all of you to share with us the questions you have about this new EDCTP program that was launched earlier this year. Some changes compared to previous programs, not always clear what changes is and how it impacts you. So today we hope to give you all the information that you need. And we've bundled all your responses and your questions in 10 themes, which is in the back of your program that you should have received at the reception. We ask you to, any questions that you may still have on top of the questions that you already asked, to ask them at the time that we address those themes. They will be addressed throughout the presentations and also in the final discussion. In the Zoom session, which is running and also being recorded at this moment, we have currently about 50 to 60 participants. People will still be joining in, maybe also in person. So the same to you in the Zoom session. If you have questions, you can post them in the Q&A box, and the moderators here in the room will keep an eye on any questions you may have and then put them to the audience or to our panel. I think we'll go into the program. We'll start with a presentation of the EDCTP3 Global Health Program by the European Commission and by the EDCTP Association. I present you the Interim Director, Elmer Nimesker, who has been involved in setting up the program and is now taking up the role of Director. And online we have people from the African office of the EDCTP Association. Moses Bokari will be joining us, the Director of the Africa office. We have Tom Nirienda, Strategic Partnership Officer from the Africa office. Michelle Singh, who some of you may be familiar with, she's a project officer, but also from the The Hague office, Lara Pandia is also joining us, and they will managing a second part of the presentation after Elmar. Elmar, please. The floor is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and it's really a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for having organized this and for having invited me, and also for the, I can only echo the excellent presentation that Saskia and her team have done. So I was asked to address quite a few different issues in my presentation, so I can skip only briefly over them. So to start off, the Global Health EDCTP3 program was created in the frame of the overarching strategy between the European Union and the African Union, where we have a comprehensive strategy and in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And of course, the main one that interests us is number 3, health and well-being, good health and well-being for all. It builds on the success of EDCTP and EDCTP2. It does have a new legal setup, and like in any framework program, we need a new, what we call in EU speak, legal basis. The reference is on the slide, and I will share or I have shared the slide, so you can click on it, and then you will get directly to the law. In this legislation, in whatever Article 98 or so, are specific objectives that, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read out to you as they are on the slide. But overall, of course, the goal is to reduce the socioeconomic burden of infectious diseases and to increase health security. I was in the preparatory discussions, we did talk a little bit about the strategic research and innovation agenda. I felt it was would have taken a bit too much time. The link is here. I just want to recall that this was really developed in a very deliberate process led by the colleagues from the EDCTP Secretariat in The Hague. It was discussed at the EDCTP forum and a number of stakeholder events. There was a public consultation. So I think it reflects really a very balanced and a well-researched view on the activities to be addressed. Again, the link, it's published on our website and the link is on the slides. Could we advance? Okay, sorry. I wanted to briefly introduce the governance of the program because I think that explains quite a bit of how it works. The central decision-making body is the governing board, where both the European Union, represented by the Commission, and member states of the EDCTP Association are represented equally. We have 3 representatives from sub-Saharan African countries, 3 representatives from European countries, and 6 representatives from the European Commission in the governing board. You see the contributions on the slide. It's up to 800 million in cash from the European Union through the framework program, and we expect at least 430-something euros in contributions from the countries, which are mostly in-kind contributions. We can also have contributing partners in the program. They can come with cash, they can come with contributions in kind, and so on. And then we have, as the bodies, as it's called, of the joint undertaking, we have a scientific committee that has been established, and we have a stakeholders group that is about to be established. The executive director reports to the governing board and leads a small secretariat that in the end will have about 30 people. I was asked to also explain how the Global Health EDCTP3 relates to the European Union Framework Program Horizon Europe. I'm not going to go in any detail through this slide, just to show you that this is a program supporting research and innovation across a broad range, from actually defense research, which is new under Horizon Europe, to lots of engineering disciplines, but also societal challenges. And one of those clusters, as it's called in Horizon Europe, is health. And indeed, Horizon Europe is funded, Global Health EDCTP3 is funded from Horizon Europe Cluster Health. Just one slide on the activities for research funding in the Cluster Health. The most recent work programs was just pre-published on Friday. So this is brand new information. If you click on this link, you will see the whole series of work programs, and one of them is a health work program. And in the cluster, the topics are broad. So you will not find your specific interest as a topic as such. You have to look at the topics more broadly. And then within this Cluster Health, there is 6 so-called destinations, and you see that it ranges from prevention to industrial support for industrial type research. This slide shows you the past work program for Global Health EDCTP3. So coming back now to the theme of this afternoon's discussions. This is obviously a submission of applications closed on 30th of August. We are about to inform the applicants of the outcome, but I think this does give you a flavor of the type of activities that we are funding. We had 3 topics for what is called research and innovation actions. These are the type of research projects. And then we had 2 topics for coordination and support actions. And we will continue this type of activities in future work programs. And I did put a column here with the number of proposals received to give you an idea, what how the response was. So we were very happy. So we had a good number of applications, which also will ensure a decent success rate, because, for example, on topic 1, we should be able to fund about 10 projects with 40 applications. That makes for a 25% success rate, which is for first time around not so bad. Of course, we cannot be assured that this will stay like that in the future, but we certainly will try to work it out, that we don't get like hundreds and hundreds of applications that we cannot fund. We do have specific conditions under Global Health EDCTP3 calls, which are different from the rest of the framework program. First of all, we do have this affordable access clause, which was introduced in the legislation. And then we take that clause for a topic where it makes sense. So if you have a coordination and support action, it doesn't make any sense. But if you have a real topic where we fund clinical trials, this affordable access clause will be introduced. And we had this for 2 topics under this year's, and we will continue in the same manner in future. We also have the rule that a limitation of funding, which is different from any other part of the Horizon Europe program. In Sub-Saharan Africa, it's limited to countries that are members of the EDCTP association. That is currently a list of 21 countries, and I know that colleagues are working on it, and we from our end and European Commission side also very strongly support this effort of bringing more countries into the program. The issue which is also in the legislation, that only legal entities from countries that are either an EU member state, a country associated to Horizon Europe, or have from a country that has an S&T agreement can be the coordinator, has led to a lot of questions. In Sub-Saharan Africa, this currently applies only to South Africa, which excludes a number of countries, obviously, from being the coordinator. We have discussed this in the governing board, and we propose to bring this out more clearly, that we could have a scientific project leader. So first of all, I want to emphasize that this limitation of role of coordinators to certain types of legal entities is not like new and introduced under EDCTP3. This has been around in many programs in the past. And therefore solutions also have been found. For example, in the Innovative Medicines Initiative, pharma industry didn't want to be the coordinator and for some legal reason couldn't really be. So they introduced the concept of scientific project leader, and we will we plan on reproducing this with clear emphasis in the work program. And then the scientific project leader, whilst not being the legal coordinator, can take a lot of important tasks in the project, as shown here on the slide, like monitoring. If you look at bullet number 2, monitoring the scientific tasks that are implemented properly, and collaborating with the coordinator on monitoring and the internal measures that the applicants and participants fulfill their obligations. And we will emphasize that the scientific project leader should ideally be from sub-Saharan African countries. And to conclude, I want to briefly outline how we are preparing for the work program 2023. We did consult our scientific committee, and they advised again to focus a bit on implementation type research, because this is clearly a focus of Global Health EDCTP3 to look at late stage trials. And we have, of course, consulted our members, the EDCTP Association and the European Commission, and we are now working on draft topics. I can already mention that we will have some fellowship programs, which we didn't have in the first call, just because it had to be developed very quickly, and there were questions, and we will maybe discuss this a bit later also. So we will have fellowships under the program as from the 2023 call. This time around, it will be implemented through networking grants, so when institution or a group of institutions gets money, which then allows them to make fellowships. The simple reason being that so far I have recruited 3 staff members, and I cannot manage an application with hundreds of applications for fellowships. So to be seen how this evolves further. And then again, this implementation type research topics. And we also will have a placeholder for addressing emergencies. But that it will be a very small amount of money, which doesn't mean that this is all we ever could invest, but it's more a technical trick. So if there is a big emergency, we could then mobilize other funding. And we will continue, as already said, the support for some networking and support measures. And with that, thank you very much. And there is a few more links. All calls are published on the Funding and Tenders portal as any other call on the Horizon Europe. Thank you, and look forward to the discussion afterwards.
Thank you, Elmar. Thanks. I ask you to hold off your questions until at the end of the first part. We may have some time for clarifying questions, otherwise we move it to the discussion panel. I'm looking at Yves. Can you put up Thomas? Hello, Tom, can you hear us? In the second
yes,
part,
I can. Yes, I can, Saskia. Yeah, thanks.
we have the South Africa office for the EDCTP Association, Thomas Nerienda, and he will be presenting the role of the association in this new framework. You've learned from the presentation from Elmar that EDCTP is now a joint undertaking. One partner is the European Commission, the other is the association, and the association is representing the interests of all the participating countries, the European, which is in Den Haag, but Lara, she will be talking later, and the African office, which is in Cape Town located, and Tom will be explaining what the African office will do for the participating countries and how they can support you. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Saskia, and thanks to ITM for this very important meeting. I'll explain, as Saskia said, what is the role of the association in the work that Elmar has just presented. I hope I can advance my slides this side. Let me see. So I hope you can see the slide without any interference from your side.
Yes, all is clear, Tom. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So, as Elmar presented, the association of EDCTP is part of the joint undertaking. And as you can see from this slide, the European and African participating states are the ones that form what is termed as the EDCTP association. Basically, that has been implementing EDCTP2. And this came out from Emma's presentation as well, how it is constituted within the current framework with the European Union on the other side, and having a governing board that overlooks at the planning and activities, and Elmar being the executive director at the moment, reporting directly to this governing board. But on top of that, we have the scientific committee, which in the association was called the Scientific Advisory Committee, and also stakeholder groups. So just to show you how I'm sorry, advancing my slides from my side is a bit slower than I thought. Are you able to do it properly from your side, Saskia?
Tom, it's okay, we see the slide.
Oh, great, thanks. So the association has the memberships that you see from Europe and Africa on this slide, 14 European countries and 21 African countries. And the process of countries joining the association still continues. And this is part of the work that we do here from the Africa office, especially for African countries, to motivate for joining the association, so that more and more countries are eligible to participate flexibly in the program. So the association has two offices, one in The Hague, in the Netherlands, and the other in South Africa, in Cape Town, where I am based. The European office oversees EDCTP association governance matters in relation to the Global Health EDCTP3 joint undertaking through the EDCTP Association Board and EDCTP Joint Undertaking Committee. This may be a little bit confusing, but if you go back to the picture that I showed, the association has its board as well. And the members of the association also contribute to Joint Undertaking Board. I think this can be clarified later if it is not very clear. The European Office also oversees the relationship management of European and African member states and contributes to the current Global Health EDCTP communication and outreach activities. Similarly, our Africa office in Cape Town here provides technical support for the design and implementation of the Global Health EDCTP3 capacity development activities and oversees the relationship management with African member states and regional stakeholders, and also contributes to the program's communication and outreach activities. So as the association has been in existence in the last 8 years or so, I think most of you have seen that the vision is basically to reduce the social and economic burden of PRDs in sub-Saharan Africa, which has been inherited into the Global Health Program now. And the mission is to enhance the research capacity and accelerate the development of new and improved medical interventions against poverty-related diseases through all phases of clinical research. And our Africa office is involved in 3 of the 5 major pillars of the second program. And first is the increasing of cooperation with Sub-Saharan Africa through capacity development programs. And these are in many programs that I can explain later, but also to increase cooperation with international organizations and third parties working in Sub-Saharan Africa. So our office continues, when I say our office, I mean the Africa office continues to play a key role in the Global Health Program as it has started. And mainly our role will be to provide support in those 10 key functions that you see in front of you on this slide. Basically to provide support to the designing and implementation of the program's capacity building activities, but also organizing workshops on proposal preparation, project and financial management, which is still a rare skill in Sub-Saharan Africa. Thirdly, organizing exchanges between the EDCTP4 regional networks of excellence, which are the foundation for collaboration and inculcating the culture of trust and working together in Sub-Saharan Africa. Fourthly, organizing annual conferences for EDCTP fellows who at the moment are on one EDCTP platform, electronic platform. Fifthly, promoting the EDCTP platform alumni's activities, including new activities and collaborations with organizations that also are doing similar work. Galvanizing the links in Africa with industry and like-minded organizations and funders, being the 6th one. And 7th, contributing to the Global Health EDCTP3 communication and outreach activities, as I mentioned. And 8thly, as you know, EDCTP has a structure of regular meetings in Africa and in Europe, alternating to bring together policymakers, researchers, and other stakeholders to continue shaping the program for the future, but also facilitating networking. And 9th, facilitating establishment or of or renewal of existing memorandum of understanding with key partners in sub-Saharan Africa. At the moment, EDCTP has memorandum of understandings with Africa CDC, which represents the Africa Union, and AUDA NEPAD, and WHO Afro. And just this week here in Cape Town, there will be a fourth MOU added to that list through the collaboration with the International Center for Genomic Engineering and Biotechnology. And lastly, promoting open science for dissemination of the Global Health EDCTP funded scientific activities in sub-Saharan Africa. So as you can see, through the association and the Africa office, we have a key role of supporting your activities and making sure that what you're doing really responds to the missions and objectives of the partnership in the way it has been designed. And I'll be happy to answer any questions later if there's need for clarification in these areas. So I hand over to Lara, my colleague, who will talk more about what they do within our organization or in the secretariat in supporting member states. Over to you, Lara. I'll stop sharing now. Sorry.
Lara? We can't hear you. Okay, we can't hear Lara. Sorry, Lara. I suggest that maybe we move on with the country presentations, Lara, and then you can share your slides on the ICHAS just before the discussion. Would that be okay? She left. That is okay then. Okay, so Lara was going to introduce how the participating states can provide in-kind contributions to the programs. It's quite a complex procedure on which we received a lot of questions. And the key message that she was going to say is that they are the go-to point if you have any questions, and they will try to, on a case-to-case basis. Oh, Lara is back. Lara, can you hear us?
I hope so. Do you hear me?
Oh, yes, we hear you.
Okay.
Welcome back.
I should have tried talking earlier. Sorry about that.
But you did. Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, let me just try sharing my slides. Okay, do you see them okay?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, sorry about that. So, and thanks so very much for the invitation to join today and for organizing this meeting. So as Tom just mentioned, I'll cover a little bit now in more detail around the different ways that the participating states, as we call them, these are the African and European members of the EDCTP Association, can contribute to the Global Health EDCTP3 program. And this just refers back a little bit to what Elma presented in terms of the council regulation that was established for the joint undertakings. So following that, the adoption on the 19th of November in 2021 of this council regulation, sort of establishing the Global Health EDCTP3, the EDCTP Association sent to the European Commission its letter of commitment to accede to the Global Health EDCTP3 joint undertaking, making a commitment of just over, well, around 440 million to the program. And this was based on individual letters of commitment for participation in the program that European and African member countries submitted to the EDCTP Association. And this accession was also required according to the legal basis of the program. And those contributions, as Elma mentioned, comprise individual contributions from the different member countries that have committed to the program, both in cash, so it is possible for countries to contribute in cash to the different calls and activities of the joint undertaking, but also and mostly in kind. And these are referred to as in-kind contributions to additional activities, or ICAs for short, which I think people are slowly starting to hear more of. Hopefully we can bring a bit more clarity to that term today. Elma mentioned the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, or the SRIA, as it's called, for Global Health EDCTP3. In there are a number of specific objectives outlined for the program. 5 to be specific. Tom just mentioned what those are. And these in-kind contributions are largely geared towards achieving this third objective, to facilitate better alignment of countries around a common strategic research and innovation agenda. So what are they? Well, they're basically the main mechanism for countries to contribute in kind to the joint undertaking. They are activities that are funded and managed by one or more of the participating states, either independently or jointly, and that they fall within the scope of the program and contribute to its objectives, so these 5 objectives. They must be developed and implemented in an aligned, integrated and coherent manner by the participating states, and to follow the strategic research and innovation agenda. And when we say that they have to be aligned, integrated and coherent, we mean that they need to be kind of identified up front in advance of when the activities plan to be implemented, that the countries need to try and discuss with one another where possible, align or coordinate what they plan to fund, and then they are included up front in the annual work programs of the EDCTP3 joint undertaking. And they cannot be funded by the joint undertaking or other union funding programs, with the exception of where, if they are, they cannot be kind of double counted across programs. So there has to be careful monitoring of that. So they can include activities that are directly linked to the activities of the joint undertaking and contribute to its objectives. So by this we mean activities that are aligned with other participating states. They're independently managed by the countries in accordance with their own national funding. So it's not that they have to be run in accordance with the joint undertakings funding mechanisms or rules. They are activities that are implemented by, they can be activities implemented by sub-Saharan African governmental research organizations. They could also be activities which promote networking and partnership building and relationships with private and public sector organizations. And they could be support for development of research infrastructures and clinical trial networks, capacity development activities, support the enabling environment for conducting clinical research in Africa, or strengthening health systems, preparedness, for example. So it's a really broad range of activities that can be counted. And in general, they tend to be the activities that countries are already supporting. But the idea is to, rather than retrospectively look at what countries are already supporting, to try and look forward and find ways to support activities under a common research agenda. The main requirement for ICAs, I touched on this a bit, firstly, that they have to be submitted annually. Currently, we're working to the timeline of the 15th of September. This is a similar timeline that was used for EDCTP2 for similar in-kind contributions. And they basically, in any given year, countries have to submit to the EDCTP Association activities that they expect to fund in the following year. So, for example, this year, by the 15th of September, the countries had to submit activities that would be included in the 2023 work plan. And these activities basically are a means of demonstrating how countries support national activities that are in the scope of the program. And because they're in the scope, they're in-kind contributions. The ICAs then are collated by the association, submitted to the joint undertaking, And there they then they undergo a review in consultation with the Joint Undertakings Scientific Committee, and they have to then be deemed eligible by the Joint Undertaking Governing Board for inclusion in those annual work programs. Part of the requirements is that participating states, as I mentioned, also have to try to align. And so countries also have to try to find tasks or an activity that links their ICA with another country's ICA where possible. Now here I just put a few examples. So joint funding of the same activity, maybe regular dialogue, either by telephone or on funders groups that are specifically talking about funding a particular activity, workshops between beneficiaries from ICA's funded by different participating states, or maybe meetings organized to try and find synergies in future activities to be supported between the countries. There are many different creative ways that countries can find to do that alignment, but it is something that is a requirement and would need to later be then some kind of evidence provided for that. And that brings me to the reporting part, because that's also a requirement for the ICAs. So countries must, on an annual basis, support in-kind activities or have the costs incurred for these activities. And they then have to do this either through, on an annual basis, financial reporting, and then when an activity is completed, technical reporting. So this is the subject that we're currently still discussing with the Commission and the Joint Undertaking on how to report, and we're coming up with a template for that. And this is still sort of under discussion. So at this stage, we can't give full details on that, but we are providing the countries as and when the information is available, we're providing them with this. And although it's not a legal requirement, as it was under the second EDCTP program, these in-kind contributions are encouraged to be co-labeled. So for example, to indicate X activities carried out in the frame of the Global Health EDCTP3 joint undertaking, so that we can try and ensure common visibility of the activities. So I can imagine some countries, especially prospective countries, but also current members, sometimes question, why should we submit it? Because what is the importance? Well, they contribute, of course, towards achieving the Global Health EDCTP3 joint undertaking objectives and towards a common shared Europe-Africa research agenda. They also play an important role in forming both future national and funding priorities, as well as for informing the Global Health EDCTP3 joint undertakings research, strategic research funding priorities. We've seen how that works under EDCTP2 by analysing the types of activities that's supported and mapping them across our strategic research priorities and seeing where gaps are and how they could be filled in the future, both by participating states and the programme. So the other reason is that they will have increased visibility. So they will be publicised as part of the work programmes on an annual basis, but also as part of the dissemination and outreach activities in the programme. So they will also be amplified in that sense. And then, of course, not the least important reason is that the reported costs incurred can be accepted by the joint undertaking and count towards matching of EU funding to the joint undertaking. And this, of course, is a very important contribution of at least 400 million that needs to be matched by the countries to the programme. So they're an important mechanism for participating states also to meet their indicative contributions as they've outlined in their letters of commitment to the EDCTP Association. And that's also why it's very important that they are. This just gives an overview of the first two work programs for EDCTP3 and the types of the ICAs that have been included in those programs. Here you get a sense of the countries that have so far submitted ICAs, general sense of the numbers. And as you can see so far, there are 125 ICAs that have been submitted to the tune of about 300 million. And you'll see that so far there are not so many African countries that have submitted ICAs, but we are hoping to increase that with time. And we see that this is something that countries need to have a better understanding on. It's obviously the early days, and this is also why meetings like this are very important, and we hope to continue discussing that with our countries. This also just gives a sense of, from the first work program, the types of activities. There are 5 main categories: research and innovation, coordination and support, strategic partnership building, training, and other. So quite broad categories. And you'll see that, and I think I may have forgotten to put a link, but we can provide it afterwards, the link to the work programs and the types of activities. But they really vary from very specific project level activities or specific meetings being supported, to very broad program level or open calls for proposals. So there are really different types of activities that can be supported, and there's no real limitation on that. So we're also very open to discussing with the countries how to identify these and what is included. So I think this is my last slide, and it's just to sort of talk further to what Tom mentioned in terms of how we can try and support the member states, or how we do, and we hope to be here to support further. We do already have a number of existing resources available to support European and African member states with identifying and submitting ECAs. We do already have, for example, written materials explaining what they are, how to submit them, guidelines on how to use our system for submitting them. We have already run a couple of workshops on ECAs and provide a link to that after in the chat if that's helpful. This is also a good resource for countries to go back to. And we have other planned additional workshops that we plan to do, both on submitting and reporting on ECAs once that information is better known. We also have an ECAs working group that involves several member state representatives. It's coordinated by the General Assembly representative for the UK currently. And it looks at trying to exchange on the identification, alignment, and reporting of ECAs. And it's with participation of that group that we organise the different workshops. So any countries that want to participate in that are very welcome to join. It's a good forum for discussing questions and issues. And then we have a dedicated focal persons at the EDCTP Association for supporting European and African member states. That's myself and also Michelle Singh, who is on this call too. And I'll just check in a minute if Michelle wants to add anything here at this stage. But just to say that we are here to support you, and for the European and African countries that either are already on board or are considering to join the association, we want to be able to help you with any questions you have, whether that be around the ECAs or just generally how to sign up to the program or to meet the requirements for participating. And we look forward to hearing from you how we can do that and what your needs are as well. I'll just take this opportunity to check if Michelle wanted to add anything at this stage. Michelle, I think you're on.
Right there.
Otherwise, we go back to you, Saskia.
No, she was in the Zoom session. I'm not sure she's hearing us. Oh, she can join in the panel discussion.
Okay.
We'll move on because we're in the interest of time. Thank you, Lara. I think we can cross over team 10 of the program and clarify what the ECAs are. And we'll move here on the perspective from the countries that are participating in the program. We start with the perspective of Mozambique, who's been a long-term player in the EDCTP story, joined in 2004 as one of the first African countries. We have Dr. Ilegiani here with us today, who has been advising his government on EDCTP participation and has a long-term experience that he will share with you. And the other countries that are speaking later, Rwanda and DRC, are keen to learn from Dr. Ilesh as they are just joining in this year.
Hello.
Yeah, Ilesh?
Thank you, Saskia. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so the map just shows where Mozambique is in the southeastern corner of Africa. We are a country of 31 million people and have been participating in EDCTP from the very early days. So I'll just start by summarizing some of the grants we had through EDCTP in the 2014-2019 EDCTP2 period. So the table on the left side shows that we had 17 grants that we received with approximately 12 million euro. Most of these were clinical trials and studies, then some on clinical research capacity too. So in red, you see those that were coordinated by a Mozambique institution or a Mozambique researcher. So one clinical trial and study and 2 projects on clinical research capacity. Then on the right side, you see how the grants are distributed by diseases or topics, and most of them went towards HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis, which are 3 important diseases in our context, but also some grants in the area of neglected infections, lower respiratory infections, networks of excellence, and 2 on ethics and regulatory capacity. This is how the funding was distributed among institutions. That you can see that there are 2 institutions that have been the most beneficiary of the opportunities through EDCTP, and that I will talk about this again at the end, but we really need to internally in Mozambique see how we can have more institutions participate in calls and benefit from the opportunities. There is an equity issue here that we need to deal with within our country. This is the predecessor of the ECAS, the participating states initiated activities. I just wanted to bring here a flavor of what we managed to do in this period, 2014-2019. So it's not a big amount of funding that we brought through the PSIAs. They were mainly clinical trials and studies, but also clinical research capacity, which was probably the main area that was declared as in-kind contribution by Mozambique during this period. And that's something that we need to think about in this next phase as we talk about ECAS. So I just summarized the achievements of Mozambique's health research system by participating in the EDCTP. So we did find important strengthening of regulatory bodies and the health research system in this last decade by participating in EDCTP programs. There is increased capacity, especially of 2 research institutions, the ones that received the most funding for projects at scientific level, at technological level, but also in terms of project management that has built significant capacity in these institutions to manage projects. We also, through being leaders and coordinators of some projects, our institutions have gained this experience in leading and coordinating international projects, which, as you heard with the first speaker, is something that is going to happen less in this new phase. And we need to find ways of maintaining this institutional experience that was acquired in the first 2 phases of EDCTP. Also, higher in-country visibility of health research was brought in by EDCTP. Mozambique has had the privilege of having 2 high representatives of EDCTP. Dr. Mukumbi was the first one, and now Dr. Simão, who's also a high representative of EDCTP. He's from Mozambique. And the 2021 EDCTP forum was organized in Maputo. We had the president of Mozambique doing the opening of the forum during In his speech at the forum, he stated the commitment of 1% of GDP in science and technology, which is something that we now are working towards achieving. So strong words from the president. Let's see if it happens. Then in terms of challenges, we need to be involving more in country institutions. Right now, there is very few institutions that are applying for calls. The issue of ICAS was already discussed, but one of the challenges is how we coordinate and how we select these actions. We need to continue strengthening the health research system in Mozambique. There's many things going on right now. For example, the health research agenda. This agenda is now under public consultation, will be going for approval later this month. It's our national priorities for the next 5 years. I will show you in the next slide how it looks like. The progress in the last decade in Mozambique in terms of health research has opened the doors for a law on human health research. It's our first law governing human health research. So this has been submitted to the parliament, and we're expecting enactment in next year, first half of next year. And finally, the issue of national funding for research. We have a national research fund under the Ministry of Science and Technology, which really needs better financing in order to keep our research institutions competitive. We need to be leveraging experience from other African countries, and maybe there is a role here for the African office of EDCTP to help us network among African countries and see how to do better. And the final issue I wanted to mention is this issue of equity. Equity in health research was the theme of the last EDCTP forum last year in Mozambique, and it's an important issue. I have already said that we need to build better equity inside the country in terms of institutions that are benefiting, but also within countries we need to look at equity. And for example, in the past EDCTP program, there were fellowships that were given to African scientists, and there were about half of these fellowships went to scientists in 4 countries of the continent. So there is clearly an equity issue that stronger countries are better able to take advantage of opportunities. So my final slide is just the 8 priority areas in Mozambique's health research agenda, and there is a number of intersections with priority also that was shown for the EDCTP Global Health EDCTP3 program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilesh. Thanks for sharing your experience and your insights. I call on Placide. Where are you? There you are. Dr. Placide Mbala from the Institut National de Recherche Biomédicale in Kinshasa, DRC, has just been appointed as delegate of DRC in the EDCTP Association, as DRC has just joined the EDCTP Association in last summer, in a rush to be able to participate to the first call of EDCTP. Of course, Placide, as you will share, the EDCTP program is known in DRC, and you will share your experiences and your views on from DRC. The floor is yours, Placide.
Thank you very much. So sorry, I got some flu. I think it's a cold when I arrive here. So I think it's the first time for DRC to participate in the EDCTP program. We used to participate with some of collaboration with African institutions, but it was mostly as a collaborative institution. But now we are eligible to grant, I think, fundings from EDCTP. So we'll see what is the context of DRC, and also what can be the opportunity for DRC to be part of the EDCTP program. So the map shows the localization of DRC, which is in Central Africa. It's a large country with more than 2 million kilometers square, and bordered by 9 different countries. So DRC is part of the Southern Africa Development Community and also the Eastern African Community. And the ecology and the local environment is very favorable to outbreak caused by tropical diseases like viral, bacterial, and parasites. And the area of, it's a kind of an area of major outbreaks which overlap with major malnutrition crisis in the country. And we have also to highlight the recurrence of outbreak with the potential of expansion in not only the sub-region, but also in other continents. We can cite Ebola, monkeypox, and so on. And so our previous, as I say, experience in the EDCT program was the collaboration with the Institut Pasteur of Dakar in Senegal. We worked together to develop a field diagnostic capacity for Ebola, and now we are working on monkeypox. And I also participate in a joint program with our colleague from Burkina Faso to develop a course on field public health. And also why DRC joined the EDCP partnership. So we think that being eligible to EDCTP grant can lead to strengthen the local research institution through local capacity building, which is really important. And we think that getting the support for outbreak preparedness and response, and this also will help us to strengthen the disease surveillance and local health system. And also, as we are in area with malnutrition crisis, it's important to see how we can also build capacity to fight against disease in this context. So we hope that being a part of this program, we can get opportunity for grant and fundings to conduct research, also opportunity to strengthen the collaboration with other institutions within the African region, but also to strengthen the collaboration with institutions outside the African region. So I mentioned here the long-lasting collaboration that we have with ITM, which leverage our capacity in training, research, and outbreak response. And also INRB, which is one of the stakeholders in DRC, is also assigned as a center of excellence for disease surveillance, kind of COVID-19, Ebola, and so on, in the sub-region. So we think that being part of this program can help us to expand this capacity, not only in the sub-region, but also in the continent, but even outside the continent. So the challenge is that I can see for this program in the country is mostly there is no, I can say, financial support for research in the country, so local financial support. And there is a kind of weak local capacity to manage also research project. So we also experience with our research project in the country, slow administration, which can also negatively impact the implementation of the project. So also for some of the research programs that we have in the country, we need to rely on external support. So in terms of new technologies, diagnostic therapeutics, and so on. And also in most of the area where those health problems occur, there are poor infrastructure. So we need also to see how we can not only conduct research in one institution and one town in such a big country like DRC, but also see how we can decentralize these research activities in different parts of the country. So here I highlight some of the national and regional activities that I think can be aligned with the EDCTP program. As you know, we are committed to elimination of trypanosomiasis in the country, as DRC is one of the important focus of this disease in the world. And we think that it's important to strengthen the surveillance and diagnostic by innovative diagnostic. And also we develop, I can say, experience and clinical trial to assess the efficacy of vaccine and therapeutics for some of the diseases like Ebola, yellow fever, and now we are working on monkeypox. Also, we think that we are conducting research to improve diagnostic of poliovirus for the rapid response to outbreak in the context of eradication. This is a joint program between African institutions and also European and American research institutions. And as I mentioned, that INRB is also working as a sub-regional reference lab, and we think that, and right now we are supporting few countries like Cameroon, Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, and Chad. And also we are working with Uganda. Since yesterday, we have a team that left DRC to support genomic sequencing in Uganda for the Ebola outbreak. So I think those are a few activities that are now ongoing at the sub-region that we can expand and take advantage of our participation in this program. I think this is my last slide. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Placide. Claude, can you hear us? I called on Dr. Claude Sumoto. He joins us. Hello, Claude. Yes.
Yes, I can hear.
He joined us from Rwanda, who also joined the EDCTP Association this summer. And Claude is a recent ITM alumni, so he's very familiar with us. And he's been appointed as technical advisor to the Rwandan government on EDCTP affairs, and he will give us a view on what Rwanda sees as opportunities for EDCTP. Claude, the floor is yours. Please share your slides.
Thank you, Saskia, for this opportunity, and thank you for ITM for organizing this very important meet at EDCTP, especially for us who are just joining as country, joining the EDCTP Association at the first. So it will be very much useful for our country, for our plan to join while we know in details what we need to see as the opportunity in this partnership. So I will briefly talk about Rwanda in the previous EDCTP2 program and Rwanda health sector priority. Why did we join the EDCTP3? Opportunity for us through this EDCTP program, potential challenges, barriers, and potential initiative aligned with the EDCTP. So Rwanda has been participating in the EDCTP, especially EDCTP2, where at least 9 projects were involved Rwandan institutions, including the Ministry of Health, University of Rwanda, Rwanda Biomedical Center, especially, and one organization. But as Mozambique said, it seems some institutions within country did not benefit to this opportunity. And indeed, for this EDCTP3 program, we see how to involve as most institutions within the country. So among others, Rwanda benefited in multiple ways through this program. So there is new knowledge gained, capacity building, and improved program and employment for scientists. And we noticed that within the EDCTP2, Rwanda did not participate in fellowship program, yet they were there and very important for capacity strengthening. And we foresee this as a very important opportunity for the EDCTP3 to make sure our young career scientists can join the fellowship program and build. So the second element is that in most, Rwanda was just participating, did not lead the consortium, only like the ethics grant where Rwanda had this breakthrough. Otherwise, in most cases, Rwanda was just participating but not leading. And this is important for Rwanda now to join as leads of some of the project. Don't know what's happened with my slides. Okay. So why did Rwanda join the EDCTP program or association? One is that Rwanda, we are now growing the initiative, including manufacturing of vaccine, diagnostic, other essential health products. And this is an important element where we also have this, the Team Europe, where there is a support to strengthen this capacity. So it is then important that Rwanda have a strong research component growing around this initiative. There is also, of course, need of strengthening clinical trials, as well as regulatory capabilities, ethics and regulatory capabilities to ensure the produced product, health products can be very well monitored or regulated and ensure high quality, high standards of the product. So we are also increasing diagnostic capacities across the country and promote evidence-based intervention, especially using data to target interventions and policy formulation. So all these important initiatives really pushed Rwanda to ensure that all initiatives that can strengthen research capacity, clinical trial, can really be welcomed within country and ensure the growing capacity can be beneficial to the entire Africa, regional, and the national particularly. So we are also encouraging innovative approach, especially use of unconventional approaches, as now we are seeing in most of our disease control program, we are seeing that we are reaching the stable area where the reduction is quite small, and we can't reach any huge reduction as it used to be. So with this view, we think that there is a need of really making a different way of controlling the disease, a different way of doing the program or running the program. And this require, of course, investigation, require the trials, and this important in the context of EDCTP, where we be benefiting funds to support all those innovative approaches. So as an opportunity that we see among others, there is funding, as colleagues have mentioned, in clinical research and trials, capacity building, new knowledge to inform policies, improve our intervention programs. Also, Rwanda Institute will benefit by joining the consortia that's always encouraged by EDCTP. So it will be an opening window for new collaboration. And we see this as also an opportunity for research career development, especially fellowship, exchange mobility at continental as well as intercontinental levels, bicontinental, Africa and Europe. So it will be a great opportunity for our country to strengthen the capacity which are now being built. So as challenges, we see that a limited number of qualified clinical research trial experts, and this is an important one. And we foresee that the EDCTP3 we really build some level of our experts, and by joining consortium, we get more trained people, qualified people, and get used to lead consortia and the project. So we also see that we have limited networking opportunities. So maybe the EDCTP Africa, we also support in this, how to connect with other organization researchers and make sure people who works on given program are well connected within the partnership countries organization. So another thing that is good is to get opportunity for leadership of the project under EDCTP funding. I see the lead, scientific lead, of course, as previous mentioned, it will be like encouraged for sub-Saharan Africa, but given that some of the country need to build this, I think there will be a room for strengthening the capacity to be able to do this. Also, not only scientific lead, but also financial lead, financial management of the project. That is also an important aspect to develop within our countries. Another aspect is also how does the EDCTP scientific agenda align with country priorities. So this is an important one where if the agenda, EDCTP scientific agenda, is not very well aligned with the country priorities, it will always be a problem to successfully run the program within the country. So I hope there is a way to really frame this agenda in such it incorporates as most country priorities as possible. So as last, some potential initiative that could be aligned with the EDCTP3. One is that we are now having a national research funding initiative, which is within the National Council of Science and Technology, which strengthen research and innovation capacities, mostly within country. And I hope some of this initiative could be counted as ECAs. Maybe we learn more in the coming sessions, but I hope some of this grant, this strengthening research capacity, which also supports some research within the country, can be counted as ECAs. Another element is that we are building the laboratory system in which we want to promote supranational reference lab for tuberculosis, and this is one, but also for HIV and other disease. And we hope through this we'll be promoting networking and building partnership and strategic alliance. Probably this also could be one of the elements of ECAs. Maybe we learn more by interacting with the EDCTP. Again, we have an existing strong research collaboration partnership with other national, regional, and international academia. We have as RBC, we have University of Rwanda, EMS, ITM is our close partner, and the Karolinska Institute. So we are also promoting or building partnership and strategic alliance in many other institutes. So we have a strong coordination and governance, of course, led by Rwanda Biomedical Center, and the Research Innovation Data Science division under RBC. That I hope we'll be able to gather and coordinate gather all potential ECAs across the country and submit to EDCTP for approval or communicate and see whether some can be really counted as ECAs or not. Thank you.
Good Lord. Thank you very much for sharing and making time. We know you're in the middle of preparing your own conference right now, so thanks for making time. I hope we can still see you on the panel discussion. The last country on the list is Belgium, and we have our main delegate here, Kathleen Dont, from the Flemish Ministry of Economy, Research and Innovation, as we know, EWI, also the funder of our research portfolio here at ITM. Kathleen will be briefly presenting the perspective from Belgium and the experience that she has with European programming related to EDCTP. Kathleen, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much to ITM to organize this important meeting, and Saskia in particular for the engagement to do all this and to take this up. So our participation in EDCTP is to cover whole Belgium, but I can speak only for the Flemish government because I work for the regional government. So I will try to explain how we approach this in Belgium. So the regions have the full capacity of competence on research, innovation, and economic policies. I give you here only some numbers of Flanders because that's the only ones I know. That doesn't mean that there are other numbers in the rest of the part of Belgium. So Flanders is the northern part. And just to give you some ideas, we are a small country in comparison to the other countries we just heard. We are very densely populated, almost 60% of the population on less than half of the surface of the country. But we have a strong research intensity. So just to give you an idea, the global expenditure, when expressed as a percentage of the global domestic product, Flanders is found among the top countries in the world. Of course, not in absolute numbers, given the size of the country. And also most of this expenditure in research and innovation is coming from the industry, so the business expenditure. And this is also reflected in the portfolio of patents. So actually 83% of the patents are owned by private companies. And how is this done? So in Flanders, I will try to sketch the ecosystem here. Flanders is in 2021, we made it to an innovation leader as a region in Europe, and that has to do a lot with the investments, the ongoing investments in research and innovation. And the actors are mainly in the academic centers, which you show here, 5 universities. This is supported also by what we call the strategic research organizations like VIB on biotechnology, VITO on technology, IMEC on nanotechnologies, Flanders Make is Make Industry. And this is also infrastructure is supported and takes a prominent role. So there are bio incubators, bio accelerators around the academic centers. And this is also we are supporting a lot of the European infrastructure agenda, like Elixir, there's a hub in Ghent. BBMRI is on biobanking. There are more of such infrastructures, just some are listed here. Flanders Care is another initiative in which we try to cover the innovation and bring it to implementation in the healthcare sector. So this is an interdepartmental initiative between the Department for Science and Research and the Department for Healthcare. In this way, we hope to enhance the uptake in the healthcare sector itself. And then there's a whole program of investment instruments, what you see there, trying to cover the different steps in the value chain on different aspects. And last but not least is the involvement of the industry with the spearhead cluster that represents the industry. It covers also a number of large companies, pharma companies like Janssen Pharmaceuticals listed here. And then of course, I should mention here, especially the role of the Institute for Tropical Medicine and the whole ecosystem that is being built around the University of Antwerp, focusing on infectious diseases. And I think this is a very strong asset to contribute to EDCTP. All these different aspects, we have been trying to develop an overarching view, which is in the link upstairs, above there. You can read it. I'm sorry, it's only in Dutch because we are that's the language here, and it's not meant for, in fact, for a broad reading. But anyway, so in this note, we identified major headings under which there is we try to fit the different funding, and we also. This is linked to the Resilient Fund of Europe and used to invest in those areas where we saw that there's important steps to be taken. If we invest more, we can contribute to the resilience after the COVID crisis. So also one of the aspects is here, also the ITM is building with this stronger asset on clinical trials and immunology. Now, the role of EDCTP of Flanders, the commitment started already in 2004, and actually I found in my emails messages on 2001, the very first preparatory phases and coordination. If someone is interested, I'm happy to share this. And just to say that at that time, we invested in ITM to set up the clinical trials unit to be able to participate in the first EDCTP. After that first program with a limited budget of 750,000 euro for the 3 years period, there was an evaluation, and they came to conclusions and recommendations to the government, to the Department of EWI, and to ITM. They were very good, so the evaluation was very good, but they suggested really you have to continue with funding, but you have to raise the budget. You also have to identify the key performance indicators, so it's possible to follow up on the progress of the initiative and the impact it's made, and communicate broadly. At the same time, the recommendations to ITM was to ensure the quality, address a number of issues that were still remaining, but develop a long-term planning also with the key performance indicators. And what was important also, I think, in the whole development of the Institute is to focus also on IPR and the collaborations with industry. At the time, it was not trivial to do this, but IPR means not only to a way to make significant profit, but it's also about ownership, and do with this ownership the way you like that it should be used. So we took those recommendations seriously, and we increased the budgets accordingly over the different years. And that led to the clinical trials unit still being involved in EDCTP, but also to the development of the outbreak research team in 2017, and then in 2020 an insectary, to understand better the diseases, vector-borne diseases, and to study this. So you see here a picture of the previous minister when he was opening the outbreak research team facilities. We are not only investing in local initiatives, we are also trying to follow the different initiatives that are ongoing at European level. And in the context of EDCTP, I think it's important to mention the Joint Programming Initiative on antimicrobial resistance, and now more recently also the Coordination Action Be Ready, that has as a role to interact with HERA, the Health Emergency and Response Authority. And in this coordination action, we are also trying to set up an observatory to be used later to be better prepared in case of pandemic health emergencies. Now, these initiatives are also important because they are preparing towards other European partnerships, such as the one for pandemic preparedness, but also the one on One Health AMR, one on animal health, AMR and zoonosis. And there's also a couple of more that are not listed here, but that could have an important role in EDCTP3, in which you could also use this mechanism to work towards global South interactions and to align the different global initiatives to collaborate better and to align the agendas. And with this, I would like to explain how we are working in Belgium. So if one of the entities in Belgium decides to work in a European or global context, It is agreed that it is done in the name of Belgium because it also doesn't hurt anyone else, and the other partners in Belgium can collaborate as well. So you can, to do this, there was an interministerial conference for science policy in which all the collaboration agreements were, the procedures were agreed, and they installed 2 permanent commissions, and these are the coordination, what is it? The Committee for International Collaboration and the Commission for Federal Collaboration. And it are those bodies that have to try to reach consensus if we approach in a European or global discussion. So first we have to agree on a Belgian consensus on some theme, and then we have to bring this consensus idea forward to the European level and defend this consensus in the European context. And I think this is very illustrative here. Now, how is the interaction with Europe? So the Commission, the European Commission, is communicating to the permanent representation of Belgium, and they are then communicating towards the representatives of the different communities and regions in Belgium. Then it goes to the different administration levels below here. And we are all responsible to communicate to the respective stakeholders that we represent. So in the case of when we are informed, I have to communicate to the Flemish universities and stakeholders, and my colleagues from Wallonia do the same in Wallonie and the others in Brussels, etc. So how do you get in support? If you are a researcher and you have an idea and you are looking for partners and funding, you should approach the national contact point. The national contact points are there to help you finding partners or finding research funding. And maybe there's also a role for the national contact points also in EDCTP. I think it would be helpful to do this. There's another way of how you can get support from us. Sometimes we are gathering input to bring forward to the European Commission, to the framework program, and your input of the stakeholders is very important to bring these messages forward. So in this case, if you are aware of gaps or priorities that need to be addressed, you can contact the national contact points, but also your program committees or the representatives, what you have in this Commission International Collaboration, what I just described. And so the addresses and the contacts, I can help you with this, but this is all to be found online. But also, I think it's also, we should also be able to give input to the EDCTP research and innovation programs. I think it would be helpful if there are very strong ideas and strategic initiatives that can be taken forward there. So, and this is just, we are focusing on basic research. We also take the Spearhead cluster. This is the industry connection. I didn't talk about smart specialization and the Vanguard initiative, but this is also focused more on the industry. We use the Resilient Fund and focusing also on infrastructure, and the idea is not to work only in Flanders or Belgium, but to go pan-European, and in the case of EDCTP, also much more beyond and on a global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. I think we'll move on to the panel discussion.
Oh, we move on to the panel discussion. Now we have one question that's related to theme one of the discussion.
We're short in time. Casper, can you bring the panelists on screen, please? So I can already announce that we're going to run over time. We'll would like to have half an hour for discussion, so this will end about 5:15 instead of around 5. Can the panel members please join the stage? Who's missing? Okay. Dear panelists on Zoom, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. We're trying to put you on screen here. Yeah, there you're coming. There is Tom. Okay. Claude, are you still there? Hello, Inma. Okay.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So most of the speakers you've already known from our panel. Inma Peñas has joined also from the European Commission. And then here on stage we have more speakers. We have Martin Isewijn from Belgium Development Cooperation, who is also delegate for Belgium in the EDCTP Association. We have Dirk Gillet from Johnson & Johnson, who will address some questions regarding involvement of industry in the EDCTP program. And then Ilesh, you already know. Maybe we can immediately go into the questions that Kathleen has posted at the end of her programmation, and I think this will be at the end of your presentation, I'm sorry. Anja, had it first, or I go first?
Well, I think that you can go first, but perhaps I can already tell you what the question is on the first theme. So there's a question on if there could be any update on the selection of the members of the stakeholder group. So that's related to theme 1 as well. But perhaps not for Kathleen, but for somebody else.
I think Elmer is the best positioned to address that. Can you?
Well, very quickly, we have launched a procedure by the governing board to approve our selection. So we had really dramatically limited resources this year. With Inma and I, you see 50% of the manpower working on this program this year, and we had to launch a call, evaluate it, and so on. So it has taken us a little while, but the procedure is launched, and I expect a decision formally shortly. And then we will, of course, inform the selected and the ones on the reserve list and the ones that we could not select. Thank you.
Yeah, Elmer. And I think I'll pick up on Kathleen's questions in the interest. A lot of Belgian stakeholders were asking about it. Kathleen has posted the question at the end of her presentation is, yeah, how can the stakeholders of the participating countries give feedback on the drafting process of the work programs? What's the role of the stakeholder committee in that process? You know, can our priorities be heard, or can you clarify a little bit how we can input the drafting of the working programs at an early stage? Elmar?
I think this is...
Well, we do have, first of all, some provisions in the law, which I briefly alluded to, that it's really, this whole starts with the scientific committee, which is to give advice on the scientific priorities to be addressed in the scope of the call for proposals. As I also showed on my slide, the members of the joint undertaking, i.e. the EDCTP Association and the European Commission, provide input, and I can only encourage everyone to provide input through the members of the EDCTP Association. So, Kathleen, we are very much looking forward to input from you and your stakeholders through the EDCTP Association and from all the other, Belgium plus 35 other countries. So it's really quite a large constituency, and so far we haven't received so much, if I may say, but clearly I think this should be the mechanism. Just to comment, formal comitology like we have for the European normal framework program, we should not have, because this is not foreseen in the law, and also I think it wouldn't really fit for this partnership, which is really with European and African countries. And we do have it's a governing board where the members of the association have a veto right where everything is decided. So if you tell me this topic doesn't work, I'm very happy to follow your advice. The only thing I can say is we have a certain amount of money available, which is in the law, and that's really it. So the more input I get, the easier it really is.
Oh, am I on? Yes, I'm on. I don't know if Lara or Tom, you want to add to that from the point of view from the association, or?
I mean, maybe I could just mention, as Tom mentioned earlier, of course, the European and the African countries, they form part of the governance structure for the joint undertaking through the association board. We have a joint undertaking committee where the work program calls and topics are presented and discussed, and then the joint position of the association is represented by the association board members in the governing board. So I think this is certainly the opportunity through what we call the General Assembly, but it's also officially called the Joint Undertaking Committee for Global Health EDCTP3. That's the opportunity for countries to give input. But as Elma mentions, there are these opportunities through these other advisory bodies, the Scientific Committee and the stakeholder group, to provide additional feedback. And I think also there may, Elma, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there may also be opportunities through potential stakeholder meetings in the future. And we for example, have also a forum that's being organized next year. And these are also opportunities for partners to attend, to network, to give input and feedback and on the different topics that will be addressed by the partnership.
So not very much addition from my side, because my colleagues have already addressed most of the pertinent issues. But what I also saw in one of the presentations is the country research agendas. And this is an ongoing process. And as many countries as possible join the association, then we have the opportunity to hear from as many countries as possible of what the African subcontinent, Sub-Saharan Africa, basically, where EDCTP concentrates, are the priority research questions. And this is also the area that the Africa office, where I'm from, is working with the Africa CDC. And very soon, my director, Moses Bokari, will chair a meeting where we have stakeholders to talk about research agenda. So I think this has to be looked at as a two-way process also, because we want a research agenda that speaks to the interests of the countries, and countries can only make their voices heard if they join the association, as Lara said. And what will become or put together as the African research agenda with the effort that we're working with the Africa Union will be another guiding principle, so that you can also, as researchers, motivate or speak through them, through these kind of guiding documents. But we are not there yet. And what we have at the moment are the members, and that can speak through the association, but also other forums that we have, as Lara said, that we will continue to organize to hear from the field what really is important.
Any of the other country representatives want to further comment on that, or English? Okay. Okay, we move.
Maybe I am not another country, but maybe I can add that not so much as stakeholders, but there is a way for researchers to contribute to the program is to be experts for the evaluation of proposals. And this is in the Horizon Europe, you can immediately register as an expert. And that helps also a lot to know exactly the needs of Africa, and that the needs of Africa are taken into account in the evaluation of the proposals. So this also helps to know how it works, how the proposals look like, how the system works. So that's also another way that it's not direct, but it's also a good way to know how everything works. Thank you.
Emma, for that point. I think you can move on to the second theme, which it wasn't addressed in any of the presentations, but it came out in the stakeholder questions, is how the EDCTP fits and positions within the EU innovation agenda. As many of you probably know, this is an agenda that is currently just finished its stakeholder consultation round, and there was a big conference short while ago in Nairobi on this. And one of the questions that came up there was that, that innovation agenda really emphasizes the need for investment in sustainable regional research infrastructures that are needed for global health research. How will EDCTP3 contribute that? And will we see a stronger implementation of EDCTP3 programs in permanent research infrastructures? Elmar, can you say something?
I think Inma actually followed this whole concept a little more, so maybe she can address that.
Well, in the EU Africa Innovation Agenda includes the EDCTP as one of the flagships to address the public health needs in Africa. And so as being part of EDCTP3 is really an integral part of the whole innovation agenda. So there's not much to discuss. It is there. I cannot add much more. It is the way we do. And what was the second question?
Second question was about the research, whether we will have a strong push towards financing research infrastructures. And I would say we have, of course, to follow our research and innovation agenda, I think indirectly, and as we actually heard from the examples from the countries, the investment through EDCTP projects has actually contributed to that. We will continue, I think, to do that. We have, I think I did briefly mention it, we have this type of support, which are these coordination and support actions, which are actually intended to support this kind of capacity building. We had a topic on a design study for building a clinical trial infrastructure in our first call, and of course you can expect that after that will have been launched in later years. You will see like a follow-on project on that. But just one sentence on more broadly this question of how much should you invest in infrastructures and how much in project funding. This is actually a permanent question of any research funder because you always want to support a lot of infrastructures, and I was personally strongly involved in building up several of the infrastructures that Kathleen had mentioned in her presentation, notably Elixir and BBMRI. But of course, you always need to find a good balance between project funding and infrastructure funding. Otherwise, you have no more free money left in the end.
Any further comments on that point, or maybe I'll make a turn there to Dirk because this is closely related to what Elmar has just mentioned. Casper, can you perhaps put on the slide from Dirk?
Yeah, just to add, Saskia, if you will, because there was one question from the audience, how can pharma interact with EDCTP? That's the question for section 4.
Yes, so I mean, in terms of research infrastructures, it's not just the participating countries that are, or the continent that is looking for how can we build up sustainable clinical trial infrastructure. There's also a question there from industry that is running these clinical trials there, like how can we build to quote directly, build capacity, networks of sites and labs and regulatory processes that influence the startup and execution of clinical trials. How can we connect or integrate with what is being funded through the EDCTP programs? And Dirk Hillet from Johnson & Johnson is here to bring a case on a project, on an idea actually that they've been working with other partners, and to give an example of how industry is also willing to contribute to building up that clinical trial infrastructure, and to ping pong with the audience and with the people in the panel, how we can make this happen, and how can the need of the industry be aligned with the needs of the public funders. Dirk, can you?
No, very happy, thank you. Just a little bit as an introduction, I'm part of global public health within Johnson & Johnson. That means that within a commercial organization, we have a non-for-profit group, a dedicated group of people that from the lab, from the discovery up to the last mile, to the implementation, is responsible for bringing new drugs for underserved population, HIV, tuberculosis, dengue, leprosy, Ebola, COVID, and so on. And two of our major projects, current projects, are dengue, where we have a first-in-class compound in development, and also leprosy with bedaquiline. And for both of those compounds, we go to Latin America for our phase 2 and to Asia Pacific for doing the trials, but we don't go to Africa. One of the main reasons that we don't go to Africa is that we don't know where the patients are. So as you see in the proposal here, this is a proposal that we made together with a number of stakeholders, consortium. It was one of the examples that Elmar also showed on the different applications that were done. And here we tried to work on a clinical trial community platform, an African network of sites, bringing together both the high quality sites and the related labs into networks, but where we also want to find or where we want to contribute with additional data that are really critical for pharma companies to come with more trials. Because maybe before I start speaking about the proposal, the main problem today in Africa is not that you don't have a very high quality sites, because the sites are trained by academic sites, by institutes and funders that we have been discussing already, also by pharmaceutical companies. But very often those people do an excellent job. They generate very high quality data that can be included in a registration file. But the problem is that when the trial ends, there is no new trial. And so all of that expertise that is present after 1-2 years is disappearing again. And so one of the main reasons that we have been looking at it is how can we overcome that? And one of the reasons we think is we should bring more pharma trials to Africa. Because of course there is a lot of clinical trials ongoing all over the world by the different pharmaceutical companies. But for them to come over to Africa, there are a number of data that needs to be present. First of all, where are the patients? Where are the dengue patients? Because if a dengue patient with joint pain, with fever, with headache represent himself with a doctor in Africa, he's diagnosed as having malaria, because so many people go through an episode of malaria, and the diagnostics are too expensive. So the people are just not diagnosed with the right disease. So epidemiology is one of the key elements that we think more action is necessary. And second element is sites are doing clinical trials, but doing a registration clinical trial is really doing it at the highest quality level. There will be registration, the data will be used for US FDA, will be used for EMA, will be used of course for Africa, but that also means that there will be inspections coming from FDA, from EMA, to the quality of the data. So in the program, we also have a tool, or in the platform, we also have a tool that assess sites. Where are you on the continuum to become a high quality site, and what are the gaps that you're still facing? And the project does also want to offer opportunities and solutions from a resource and from a capacity building perspective that helps those sites that identify those gaps to bring them up to the highest standards of doing clinical trials. And the last aspect is also that in the proposal, EDCTP expects to have a kind of database for clinical sites. And what you see is that there is already very often a lot of work done by previous consortia. And this is the CTC platform that you see here at the bottom, number 5, is a platform that is funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that already has within the proposal information on clinical sites, information on the regulatory processes, and information on the epidemiology of patients. So the regulatory processes, maybe the last thing I want to quickly mention, is also one of the major hurdles why pharmaceutical companies do not come to Africa. So improving the processes, making them more reliable and conducive to participate in clinical research and getting approvals in the countries is another very important aspect that is listed here in the proposal. I also integrated, or the colleagues also integrated in the slide, the fact that so much fantastic work has been done by funders, by academic sites, by pharma companies, but we don't always know it from each other. There have been fantastic EDCTP projects with Agora, with Alert, but the outcome of those projects is not always known by everyone, and certainly not by the pharmaceutical industry. When I was working on this application and I found out what information is present with alert, it's such a damage that it is not better understood on what is already there, what is already available for the different organizations, whether it's a non-for-public, whether it's a pharmaceutical company, and so on. So one of the elements on the slide is also where we try to break the silos by the funders, by the academic sites, by the pharma companies, and we want to bring all of that intelligence that is present already out there together in an integrated way of high quality sites, epidemiological data, improving the regulatory processes, and making use of an existing platform that is funded by Bill and Melinda Gates, and that we can leverage also for this particular example. And the pharmaceutical company is also prepared in the industry. We have 8 different companies currently in discussion to collaborate on this, to contribute with the data on the sites, on the regulations, on the patient populations as well. So just want to stop here because I know there is limited time left. But if there are any questions, very happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dirk. I think that's a case on how, in the spirit of EDCTP, on how there should be more synergy and indeed breaking down the silos and making sure that there's interaction between the different activities. And this is one example, which is now under evaluation with EDCTP. Yeah, I think my follow-up question is, what if it is not funded by EDCTP? What's the future of this?
Yeah, it was together with Mark Alain that we will provide an update on what we were doing at the ITM site and at the Johnson & Johnson site. And then at a certain moment, it came up that both of us applied in a different consortium for this application. And I took contact with the DNDi, that is the other party that is looking at this proposal, with Nathalie Strump. And both of us presented what our intentions are, what our focus areas are. And if you look at them, they're very complementary. We focus on the patients, the regulatory processes, so the startup of the trial and the information that you need to do a clinical trial. If you look at the other consortium, very much look at the governance, look at very strongly, of course, also on the networks and the labs, but then also on pandemic preparedness. So there's a lot of complementarity in the 2 proposals, and we already have said that independently on who will get it, that we will still speak with each other and see how we can support and contribute to this, because there is so much to gain in the collaboration that we should not have this exercise, how to say, go in vain, but take the opportunity to collaborate further.
Okay. And maybe just to close this topic, there's willingness, there's good initiatives out there, there's limited funding, understandably, from the EDCTP side. Is EDCTP willing or open to then discuss, once the evaluations are done and one grant doesn't get it and the other does get it, to discuss how the 2 can be matched together and sort of have a facilitator role in there, maybe top up a little bit funding, or is there an opening there to do this dialogue and promote the synergy between the different initiatives that are on the table in this type of CSI, not for research projects, in this type of grants?
Well, there's 2 aspects to that. One is the official aspect, which is a grant preparation, where we cannot do this kind of merging of grants, especially since once we have communicated the outcome of the evaluation, we want to proceed to grant signature fairly quickly, and these kind of discussions do take some time. But of course, on another level of, we want to nurture the ecosystem, and for that we need to talk to people, and that's why I'm so glad that we can have this event, for example, today here at ITM. As I mentioned, we had really severely restricted resources this past year, but we are now really catching up with recruiting staff members. And especially once a permanent executive director will have joined next year, I'm sure the individual will want to reach out to stakeholders and will want to really talk to people so that we can start building these networks, or actually build on what has already been done by Michael Makanga and his team in The Hague. And we have tools to do so. We will have a stakeholders group, we have a scientific committee, we have the Africa office, we will have the EDCTP forum in November next year. and it will actually be held in Paris. So we will, I'm sure we will have plenty of opportunities to discuss and also to bring really in relevant stakeholders and to build on what's already out there. We had some discussions with the governing board that, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa or in Africa more generally, there is a discussion panel of funders, like an African Funders Forum. I don't know the exact name of it, but it's these kind of teams we need to interact with so that we can make best use of the limited resources. I think, again, sorry for always making the little turn based on my somewhat long-term experience in the field. I mean, this, of course, is, again, a general issue in funding, that in all kinds of biomedical research, we have the challenge that it's a very broad area. We have very specific activities from players, from infrastructures, industry, academics, and we always have this challenge, and maybe we can learn a bit from models that have been used to try and address those challenges without going into detail here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to hear that there will be room for dialogue and that we can further interact with each other and keep the conversation going. Maybe I shall close this theme on this infrastructure, and in the sake of time, we'll move on to something that a lot of questions came in, and that's the training and mobility opportunities in EDCTP3. It was already mentioned in the presentations that the fellowship program didn't happen the first time around this year because of time constraints and resource constraints. It is announced to be included in the work program 23. One of the concerns that was raised is that if African entities can no longer be a coordinator or a grant holder under EDCTP3, then how will it work for the fellowship program? You alluded to network. So does that mean that an individual fellow will not be able to apply for a grant for a fellowship that is then administered through his host institution, as was in EDCTP2? Will it only be the network opportunities, or what do you see in the future?
Well, briefly, I can only speak of the close future, which is Work Program 2023, where we will not have individual fellowships. There is a number of reasons for that, but we will have these networking grants, and I would like to emphasize that these network-type grants are very effectively used under the Marie Sklodowska-Curie fellowship programs and have been used for 20 plus years. And yes, for fellows that used to apply directly to the to the EDCTP2 office, there will be then a change. But I would really like to emphasize the usefulness of these network grants. And again, we are in the build-up phase. We have limited resources. Inma, Sven, and I spent almost as much time on the single fellowship where there was an issue under EDCTP2 than we spent on a lot of other things, and that is just not possible for the moment. And I would not see a fundamental problem not to have individual fellowships later on, but let's focus on what we can implement next year, which will be, I think, very attractive grants for networks in, for example, clinical trial research, which I think can be very helpful. And the overall investment between years 1 and, well, the first 3 years actually between 21 and 23 will very much amount to the same share of the program than what we had under EDCTP2. So we have no intention of not investing in fellowships because this is an important part of the program. But, there will be some change of the way it's done.
And if we look at the network, at the new format, we go to the network, it would be modeled on the Marie Curie training network. So is that what you were saying? So one coordinating institutions, several partner institutions involved, and then fellows that can circulate between the different institutions while they're going through a training program, or what should our stakeholders understand?
Well, I cannot go into this detail because we simply haven't really discussed this with our partners, so we need to see what comes out of that. But generally speaking, I mean, we do have these so-called host fellowships under Marie Sklodowska-Curie program, where it's more the, let's say, the institutions, I would say, that then host fellows, and then we have these training networks that are typically around a thematic area where different institutions that work in this given thematic area come together. And I think generally speaking, these are pretty good models, but details are still to be discussed with our partners, and we'll see what comes out of it.
I may briefly ask, because all three countries or African countries commented on the importance of the fellowship program to build capacity in their country. Rwanda and DRC was saying we want to sign in on this. We haven't benefited from it in the past. Now we really want to tap into that. Any comments on how do you see this kind of networking concept for fellowships? Placide?
I think I have maybe my comment or question would be how do this network should be built? So this is a network. This could be a network between like African countries in the EDCTP program, or it's mandatory to have a network between African countries and European countries?
Well, generally speaking, as you know, the program is also for collaborating or for strengthening collaboration between Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa. So in our 2022 work program, we had the obligation to have participants, at least one participant from either part, so to speak. But this can be changed in the work program, and it's not yet decided. But generally speaking, I think we have had and also under EDCTP2, I think we have seen that this element of partnership between North and South is quite helpful.
Ilesh? No?
Thank you. May I go, Saskia?
Yes, Claude, go ahead.
Thank you. So it's indeed interesting for us. Myself, I was like very well prepared for the individual fellowship, which used to be the new format. But indeed, as my colleague said, maybe it will be important to know how this networking will be built, because at the same time, we need to see how this network can be made in the sense that the country that really need to benefit from this capacity building benefited, not because at one time you will find this country are not in well-connected network, then they will not easily benefit this capacity building approach, the fellowship. So how we EDCTP make easier for the country to network and benefit from this fellowship. Thank you.
Yeah, Ilesh, and then we
So
comments.
No, I think my comment is very brief. We have, I mean, generally speaking, the African countries have a number of early and mid-career researchers that we need to keep in the system at all costs, because a lot of investment has been made, and also these are the people who, when we look at the future, are going to keep the system working. So whatever the model of fellowships there is, what I think is important for African countries that we make the most of the opportunities, and we need to be better prepared. I mean, what we have seen in the past EDCTP program is that there were a few countries that benefited the most, and it will be nice to see, perhaps with the network model will give us more opportunity to see more countries benefiting from the opportunities of training the people.
Are you calling on the association, on the Africa office, to play a facilitating role in that, or?
I'm calling on everyone, basically. So, I mean, I think every country needs to play a role in finding people that can apply for this. So there is a role for the representatives of countries to do that job. And if the Secretariat can help us in figure out what are the best ways of using this opportunity, especially because there will be a new model of how this works. So we all might use some help in figuring out what's the best way of making the most of the opportunity.
Yes. Any comments from our Zoom panelists? I saw Inma, you were nodding. No comments, just agreeing.
I completely fully agree with that. And the big experience is the Africa office about the fellowships. But I wanted to say about you have asked the question about this, what did you say? What I wanted to say that there is a strong, Elmar has said also in his presentation, strong advice that in all the grants, there is the African leadership in front, independently who will be doing the payments, but who will be really taking the lead in the scientific part of any project, also in the training projects. So I wanted to leave that message. That's important that everybody can be scientific leader. So this message has to be very clear there. Thank you.
Alrighty. Yeah, thank you, Inma. Sorry for that. I think, Martin, you still want to add something
maybe
on
just a brief comment coming from the Belgian Development Corporation, signaling the fact that we've heard, the question of equity being brought up between the African states as well. That is something that we in Federal Development Corporation have also explicitly addressed in choosing a number of partner countries with a specific fragile background, and that we try to focus on these countries, because if you don't do that, then you risk that what we have seen, that some of the countries that are already a bit further in having capacities, there's a sort of a snowball effect where they get all the grants because they have the better capacity, which makes them build more capacity. And I think this principle of leaving no one behind can be maybe put into practice, but it has to be done through explicit policies because it won't come naturally. So that's just maybe a small comment, something to take into consideration.
I think that's a very important comment. I see that Tom has also raised his hand. Tom, can you had a question, a comment?
It is a comment, Saskia. So, and thanks, Emma, for clarifying that. I must say that this will not particularly be a new approach, but because it has been used in both EDCTP programs, but maybe on a smaller scale. So if you look at the fellows and trainees that have been produced in the previous EDCTP programs, they are trained through 4 major channels. In the research and innovation grants, which are big clinical trial grants, there's a mandatory capacity building work package, where you have to explicitly say who you're going to train and in what categories. So MSc, PhD, postdocs. And then there's training done by consortium, like what we have now in the relationship we have with Africa CDC, that we have 10 consortia that have gotten grants to train 150 epidemiologists from national public health institutes. Then there's a training that is through the networks, like the networks of excellence. So recently we got funding from UK, which has been used to support female PhDs in all the 4 networks. 20 candidates are being supported now. They have started their PhDs, but only females. So apart from the individual fellowships, there are indeed ways where the 3 other methods can be maximized. as individual programs. And this would solve the problem that Ilesh has alluded to, is how do you train from the neglected parts or neglected study groups, research groups, because these are important. This is where diseases are coming from. This is where epidemics are hiding. That's where, you know, there's no capacity to write good grants for training. So that's a very good point. And if these kind of targeted network training grants can address those issues, then we would be killing two birds with one stone, that we are multiplying the numbers of people, but also reaching hard to reach countries where we need people to be trained and be part of the ecosystem. So I just wanted to mention that it is something that has been done, but not described. But I think this time we have an opportunity to have the networks take full responsibility and cover most of the issues that we are worried about: geographical gaps, gender gaps, and also maybe isolation gaps. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, good points made. And I think it also aligns with what Martin said. You need targeted policies, so targeted networks, targeted geographies, targeted parts of the ecosystem that you want to reach. And that would be required to address that equity issue. I think we are running really out of time, so this will be the final point. Maybe also for the people in the audience and on the Zoom, there were more questions, and we're looking into also organize a written response to these questions so that we can share with all the stakeholders, because we won't be able to probably go through all the teams. But maybe a final point, which was repeatedly addressed both by the Commission Association and also by the stakeholders, is the leadership of African entities in EDCTP activities. And we've heard it from Mozambique. We have been able to be coordinator. It's necessary to build our capacity in managing projects and leading projects. We've heard it from Rwanda, who wants to expand the leadership in local initiatives, from the DRC that is trying to build up as a regional center of excellence and to be a beacon of excellence in the continent for their part of Africa. Now, if you can't be a leader, if you have an idea for a project and you can't take the lead as a coordinator, that feels like not as a good thing. It feels like a step back. You've mentioned the position or the possibility to take the scientific leadership. I think everybody is curious to see how that will work out. So how do you do it? Maybe Amar, I don't know if you want to, or Inma, if you still want to further elaborate a bit on this, and otherwise I immediately will ask to the partner countries, if you want to be scientific lead to everybody in the panel, how does Ilesh has an idea and he wants to move on with a project? How do you proceed? How do you get a consortium together with a European partner and take all the administration? Like it's not easy. If it's your own idea, you move on and you carry on and you do it. But if you're not allowed to be the coordinator and the contract holder, then what's the next step then? What's your advice to these research leaders in the African continent? Who wants to go first? Nobody.
We have some ideas, but we have to discuss with our partners. Elma will maybe explain that better.
Okay.
Maybe I just say one more thing on, being the coordinator. There is really a clear difference, between EDCTP2 and Global Health EDCTP3. Global Health EDCTP3 is fully part of the Horizon Europe program that has advantages, and it has some inconveniences, as often in life. The advantage is that you have the exact same model grant agreement, you have the exact same mechanisms, the machinery works, I think, quite well. The disadvantage is that we have to follow exactly the Horizon Europe route, and that means that we no longer pay grantees individually. The main task of the coordinator is to be the bank for the project. That is really the main practical role of the coordinator. And that is a role that, for budget reasons, central services in the Commission did not want to give to just any country. And that is actually not something specific for EDCTP. This is actually the same in other programs as well, and has been this for other institutions, type of institutions like small companies in the past. So we have separated this role of bank for the project and scientific project leader under the Innovative Medicines Initiative. Dirk maybe can report that the company certainly, Johnson & Johnson was leading a big Ebola project that I had a small role in getting off the ground at the time. I would assume that Johnson & Johnson managed to scientifically lead that project, even though they were not the bank for the project. And so I would just hope that this kind of approach can also be seen. And indeed, this will not be so easy and needs to be implemented. But being the bank for project is not such a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I can maybe also comment on the proposal that I shared. We have there, because of the financial transaction that can only happen with certain countries, which certain arrangements have been made for us. The South African software company that creates the clinical trial community platform, Nuvotech, is the official applier of the application. But the Science for Africa Foundation is the African partner that you could see as a scientific leader in this particular consortium. So I think it is something that certainly can work out and that we already try to put in practice through this specific example. Yeah.
Where?
Gentleman in the middle.
I can't see it. Ah.
Good afternoon. I understand that step that's taken from Horizon 2020, that now the coordination should be in the north, but I find it very unfortunate because also it's one way also a bottleneck at the European side, because which are the institutions that are involved in working in sub-Saharan Africa are not thousands and thousands of institutions, so that's already one issue. Secondly, also it's a step backwards compared to EDCTP1 and EDCTP2. So I'm really surprised that this is maintained and not. And for playing the bank, I'm involved in the IMI grant and EDCTP grants. We see that for the European institutions, for academic institutions, if they have to be the coordinator for grants which are also with sub-Saharan Africa, you feel a high reluctancy at the administration of our institutions to take that responsibility. And so I think this should be thought through, because if you really want to go in this, EDCP is now existing for 20 years, and I have the feeling we're building up capacity, and then 20 years later, it's like a step backwards to not fully give also the managerial capacities to the people that have been growing in those last 20 years. So I find it a step backwards. And it's also very difficult in our institutions who are used to work in Europe with European institutions. If you then work with sub-Saharan African institutions, you feel that the administration, if they have to take the full responsibility for the grant for 5-6 partners in sub-Saharan Africa, that there's a high, for the financial risk, a high reluctancy in the institutions. It may be different for institutions like London School or ITM, who are used to work in the south, but for most academic institutions in Europe, I think it's the financial risk is a question mark, and and which is not good for the academics working in those institutions.
Just to clarify, Jean-Pierre is with the Global Health Center in the University of Antwerp. Yes, so there's I think continued dialogue on that point is necessary. I think also in the frame of equity, where you will, again, focus resources to partners in the South that are already well connected with European institutions, and the stronger will get stronger. That kind of rhetoric was often in the stakeholders' concerns. And we're looking forward to see how the scientific leadership role will be work out and be implemented. And then we continue giving feedback on how it works. Is that acceptable, Fro? Ines, final comments?
I think we will see how it works. It certainly feels a bit strange. I agree that it is not a step in the right direction. But, I think in the coming years, we'll learn how it works. No one knew ice cream was good before it was invented. So, might be a good thing or bad, we'll see. But I suspect we're going to have some challenges, but to coordinate this, scientific leadership with being the bank, things are connected. They are not that separated in day-to-day life. So let's see how it works, I think.
Oh, I don't mean to have the final word, but just one consideration is, I agree with the comments by Jean-Pierre, is that when we do science with our partners, we often find that many of our partners overseas in sub-Saharan Africa, they don't have yet that administrative culture, that strength. They're increasingly strong on science, but less strong research institutions haven't caught up on the administrative side. So is one solution potentially to have, as part of EDCTP grants, actually to have an administrative strengthening capacity building. So it's not just about scientific capacity building, but it's about scientific program management capacity building. And that way we can perhaps bypass the European legislation about who can get money and actually have the money, but actually at the same time build the capacity to deal with money, because then it allows institutions not maybe to get EU money, but maybe to get NIH money, as I know that INRB gets, and other institutions, and it empowers them, builds their capacity to be able to get external funds. So then it's a win-win.
Thank you. I think on that note, we're 40 minutes in delay. Thank you all for staying so long. I'm getting micro issues. Thank you very much, panel members on the Zoom session. I'm afraid we're going for a networking drink here, which you cannot join, but we'll drink a glass to your health. We hope to see you soon and continue the questions and discussion that are going on. And yeah, thank you all. The drinks are downstairs in the foyer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Surprise downstairs and drink.
Bye, everyone.